Hello everyone, this is Felix from GMWolf. Today we're looking at 3D terrain texturing. So this video will build up upon the last video I made, so if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend you go watch it. So today we're going to be looking at gradient-based texturing, which blends two textures based on a normal vector. This is good to represent cliffs and vegetation, etc. And it can be baked really cheaply, which makes it really easy to implement. So first we're going to look at how we can calculate the gradient, which is really quite simple. We're just going to look at the z component of the normal, which isn't quite mathematically correct, but it does give some really convincing results. So first we're going to be loading two textures. Here I'm just using the terrain texture, which I got from textures.com, which used to be CG Textures. It's a really good website. And here I have terrain texture rock, which I also got from textures.com. So first we're going to have to create a shader for our terrain. So here's a blank shader, and first we're going to be adding an attribute called inTexture1 of type float, and I called it inTextChord1 in order to get the binding to work correctly. Here I'm adding a varying so that we can pass our TextChord1 to our fragment shader, and down here we are setting the two together so that we can make v_f blend equal to inTextChord1. Then we also need to change our inText coordinates to inTextChord0 so that the binding works correctly when using our vertex format. Then we're going to the fragment shader, and what we're going to do first is add our varying vf blend so we can actually use it inside our fragment shader, and we're going to add a uniform sampler 2D text2, which is going to be our second texture. So first we're going to get our color from the first texture using texture 2D, and then our color from the second one using the exact same technique. Here we mix our two colors together based on our blend factor, and like before, we're multiplying it by the color and passing it into our fragment color. So inside our terrain object, we want to go in the create event, and we want to update our vertex format to include our blend factor. So we're going to add a custom vertex format type of type float, and we're going to be using TextChord as the usage in order to get the binding to work correctly. We then get the second texture from our background and set it to texture 2. Then we go to the bottom of our create event, and we want to get the sampler index from our shader, in order to pass it when we draw it. So we do sampler text2 is equal to shader get sampler index SHG terrain text2. Inside the draw event, what we want to do is first calculate our blend factor, which we're simply gonna subtract our z component of our normal from 1. Then inside our vertex, we want to add vertex float 1 vertex underscore buffer slash blend every time for every single vertex. Now it's important you do it at the end because this is how we defined our vertex format, and it's also important you do it for every single vertex. So what I did here was I copy and pasted it after every time there was the light comment. Finally, where we have our vertex submit, we want to first set the shader using shader set, and then reset it after having submitted our vertex buffer. And inside our shader definition, we want to add texture set stage so that we can pass in our second texture to be used inside the shader. And this is it. As you can see, this is the result, and you get nice green grass whenever we have a flat area, and more steep areas have this rock texture. So this is really useful if you have cliffs, etc. It does give more depth to your terrain and makes it look generally much nicer. So this is it for this tutorial, guys. If you have liked it, please give it a like, and if you want to see more of these tutorials, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time for some more Game Maker tutorials.